Hey there, just wanted to share a quick tip that I stumbled across while doing a full service on my DW735 planer. Did a full overhaul on it, so there was literally zero things left together. I ended up pulling the entire upper chassis off of the lower chassis, so I had to do a few things to make sure the posts had the correct amount of tension between the two nuts and to reset the height on all four posts. So what I did to start was, when I had the posts within the upper chassis but off the lower base, what I did was manually, so I hand rotated all four posts until the chamfer on the upper edge of each lead screw was just poking out from the top of this screw, so you could kind of see. I mean, you could also go with the flats in the top of the nuts, meet the flats of these nuts. Either way, that's going to get you very, very close to correct on all four posts. So then when you're moving the lower chassis into place, putting it onto the four posts, you want to be careful to not rotate any of those posts. So what I also did when I put the lower chassis on, you have to make sure you put on all four posts, lower them on equally, so you don't kind of pull any of the posts left, right, forward, backwards. Otherwise your nuts will jam up once you get on there. I kind of did that, so that's how I can let you know that that's a possibility. So anyway, once you have the four screws underneath the lead screws lightly tightened, what you want to do is lower the upper chassis onto a piece of plain stock. So this stock, I know, is the same width across the entire length. So what I did was put it underneath. There's kind of two lips where the cutter head is going to sit through. There's a front edge and a back edge, and what I'm going to do is lower the upper chassis down onto this block of wood, and then I'm going to start moving it around as I'm getting closer to it. When it stops moving, that means I'm touching. So I'm going to back it off just a little bit so it moves again. You can kind of do a couple ways. You can see if it moves or not, back and forth. Okay, so it's away from the surface. Move it slightly until it touches. All right, I can hear it. I can hear the wood scraping when I move it back and forth. Same over there. So what I'm going to do is take this and push it over to the other side, the other lips. And actually this is a little bit tight on that side. Move it back just a hair. Might have shifted a little bit when I did the final tightening on these nuts, but now I can hear it's scraping over here and just barely clearing over here. If I move it just a fraction of a turn, it begins to scrape on the front half, which means I'm within, say this is a 1/20th of a turn times 1/16th of an inch for each revolution. I'm pretty close in my front to back screw height. So what I did after I got that roughly in place with the block of wood is I took a pair of vice grips and got it to the correct size where I could grip. There's a flat on the bottom of each of these posts where it meets the lower chassis. So what I did is I gripped that with the channel locks. You can use another a box end wrench, but I didn't have one of the right size on hand. So I gripped the post with the channel locks and used a 6mm hex nut to tighten it. I used a set amount of torque. I think I used the 11 setting on my DeWalt brushless drill. So I don't know if it has to be that tight or if it's too tight, but it worked for me, and I didn't see the posts walk at all while I was doing that. And what I just did now to verify that it's still very, very close to where I had it set. I'm pleased with the ease of raising and lowering it, and I'm pretty sure this will plane just the way I want it once I put it all back together. But anyway, hope that helps. Hope that gives any of you who have taken this task of rebuilding a DeWalt planer a little more hope, a little bit easier way to go about leveling your posts. Have a good one. So this is an addendum to the video I just made. While overhauling a planer, I ended up taking the entire upper chassis off the lower chassis, and what happens when you go to replace your upper chassis onto the lower chassis is the lead screws won't go back in. And this is because there's an anti-backlash system on this, which means that this lower nut is not one and the same with this upper nut. There's actually a spring between these nuts that results in the elimination of the backlash between the ball screw and the its nut. So what you're going to want to do when you encounter that, once you go to put the upper chassis back onto the lower chassis, is you're going to take this nut, thread it onto your ball screw a certain distance, just so it's out of the way. Then you're going to place the spring between these two nuts onto the lower ball screw, or onto the upper nut. I did this while the top of the planer was flat against my bench. Then I started screwing that in. Then this should rotate freely while this is in the upper nut, while the ball screw's in the upper nut. Rotate it freely until it stops. Okay, so what I did to determine my basic distance was I measured how far this was inset from this lip on the ones I hadn't touched yet, and that turned out to be about 5 millimeters. That got me close. So I rotated after this stopped, rotated it clockwise 5 millimeters, and then screwed these into the threaded holes in the upper nut. Then what you can do is rotate the lead screw and see if it feels the way you recall when you take the planer apart. It should not be free, it should not wobble. There should be enough tension to where it feels just a little bit difficult to turn. Once you have the chain and the wheel moving the screws, you won't even notice the tension at all, but it should be difficult to move by hand. Once I tightened my screws on all 4 posts, I noticed that 2 of them didn't have enough tension. What I did was I unbolted these screws, put a little more tension. I turned 1 or 2 more holes in the tighter direction and screwed them back in. They had the correct amount of tension then. This problem frustrated me for about, 40 minutes to an hour yesterday, and after sleeping on it, I was able to figure out this method of getting these screws back in and making the tension correct. Thanks for watching.